too many places to hear that.
Oh, no, every day, right?
Yeah.
We've got Viv coming.
Where's Viv?
Sneak tell. One more to come.
Not Viv. She's doing her social media.
Sorry, come on.
Doing your social media? Good morning, everybody. First, I want to thank Ian Wright and the Davis family for hosting us here at Queen's Arcade. Been a big week for them. They've recently announced investment in this part of the city, which is great. I've got my colleagues Simeon Brown and Mark Mitchell. We've got Viv Beck from Heart of the City, Sunny Patel from the police, and what we're talking about is since we came into government 2 years ago, the government's been focused on fixing the basics and restoring law and order. That started by changing the fundamental direction of the justice system under the previous Labor government. Was about reducing the prison population, irrespective of what was happening on our streets, to a shifted focus on reducing the number of victims of crime. That's what we're focused on. And we've done a whole lot of changes. We toughened up the sentencing legislation, brought back 3 strikes, introduced the Crimes Amendment Bill, which deals with citizens' arrest powers and infringement regimes for shoplifting. We've given extra resources to the police and much more foot patrols. We're changing rules around trespass. A whole lot of things that are about turning the tide on crime and making us feel safer. And the good news, and of course gang legislation banning gang patches in public, and the good news is that's making real progress. People feel safer in New Zealand. We've had a big reduction in the number of victims of crime. But one of the things that we constantly hear going around the place is there's still work to be done in our town centres, and a sense of disorder and chaos in our town centres. New Zealanders are fair-minded people. We're always focused on helping those in need, but we also need to reclaim our main streets and town centres for the enjoyment of people who live here, people who visit, people who work here, and want to be able to work and operate in a safe and welcoming environment. And that's not what we've been seeing on many of our streets. And that's why we're going to be introducing legislation into the House soon to give the police an extra tool to deal with antisocial and disorderly behaviour, and that is move-on orders. And so we'll be amending the Summary Offences Act to provide police with the power to issue move-on orders for people who display disorderly, disruptive, threatening or intimidating behaviour, obstructing or impeding somebody entering a business, breaching the peace, all forms of begging, rough sleeping, and behaviour indicating an intent to inhabit a public place. And those people, if you have a move-on order, will be specified for an area, particular time for up to 24 hours, and it will require a person to move on a reasonable distance away from the area as specified by the constable. And if they don't, then they could be arrested and face a fine of up to $2,000 or 3-month imprisonment. I want to thank Sunny Carshall and the Ministerial Advisory Group on Real Child Crime, who pushed for this, and Sunny's been up and down the country and has had very strong feedback, because this just doesn't apply in downtown Auckland where we are today, but all across the country, and it's an issue in town squares, in little countries, little townships, and in big cities equally. And we've heard that very strong message from businesses, but also from residents. I also want to thank National MP Ryan Hamilton, who had a members' bill starting this process as well. I'll pass to Mark Mitchell to make a few comments, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming out today. Look, I guess my first comment would be there's been a lot of work done with our stakeholder group that came together when I became police minister, and that involved police, Sonny and his team, Viv, Heart of the City, our social service providers, CPNZ, our Maori wardens, and government agencies. And we all came together fundamentally initially because crime was getting out of control in the Auckland CBD, and it's our biggest city. It's the first place that many of our visitors from overseas touch, and there's a lot of residents and people that want to come in and enjoy the city and businesses. So that group has been very successful in terms of working together. We are seeing serious crime reducing in our CBD. That's good, but we continue, and this has been a problem for us for a long time as a country, as we continue to see people that choose to make the pavements somewhere that they want to live. And not only is it a safety issue for them, it's a big safety issue for the residents, for the people that want to come into our CBDs and enjoy them, for those people that are trying to run businesses and their employees. And so there was a gap in the way that we were able to actually deal with that. And I think that the move on order, it's not a panacea. It takes a whole lot of different actions to be able to deal with these issues. But this is one of the actions that we think is going to make a big difference to making sure that we don't have people living on our pavements and on our streets. So with that, I'll pass to Simeon for some opening comments as well.
No, thank you, everyone. As Minister of Auckland, just want to say thank you to Minister Goldsmith for bringing this issue forward, but also to acknowledge the many businesses here in the CBD who have been raising this as an area of concern, an area of need. We have our city centre safety plan, which is very much focused on making sure we have a balanced approach. We need to make sure we are enforcing the law, and providing additional tools to police is a critical part of that, and will be massively welcomed by local businesses. We also need to make sure we're providing housing for those who need it. And last year we funded over 200 additional spaces for housing for people in the CBD who need it, and we have placed around 150 people into housing over the last few months. So we're taking a balanced approach as a government, making sure we provide support to those who need it, but also making sure that those who break the law, there are consequences, and that there are tools for our police to keep our city safe. So this new tool will be incredibly welcomed by local businesses here and in cities up and down our country. Thank you.
I just invite Vivek to say a few words.
Thank you for the opportunity. Some of you will know that 2026 is an incredibly important year for the Central City. We've had a decade of significant disruption. We've seen the NZ International Convention Centre open last week. We've got the CRL coming on stream, and we've also got a lot of other investment. We have lobbied long and hard to make sure we have a city that actually addresses social needs and economic needs, and I do want to acknowledge the work of the government to listen and give us the various things that we've had over a period of time. Also council and social agencies, police and others who have made significant improvements here. We're absolutely delighted with the improvements. We welcomed 200 brand new international students to the city last night, and it feels a whole lot better to be welcoming them now than it did even not that long ago. So that's really great. But the one thing we do still have concerns about is antisocial behaviour. That continues to come up from businesses, as ministers have said, but also from people who live here. We've got grandmothers and other people coming to us raising concerns, and we believe this is the piece that will actually round out the total solution. And we have to be a city now that grows, that attracts investment, and that is aspirational, one that looks after our people, but actually is a great place to invest and do business. So we are happy to have been heard on behalf of the business community in Central Auckland. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're happy to answer any questions.
Where are these people going to go?
Well, the move on order will move them to a reasonable distance away. Now, of course, that'll mean different things in different parts of the country. If you're in Napier, if you're in Whangarei or in central Auckland, it'll be different. Maybe a kilometre up the road, it may be outside the business district. And you might say, well, does that just shift the problem somewhere else? Of course, the law applies everywhere in the country, and so if you are told to move on and you go up the road and you start doing the same behaviours again, well then you'll be subject to another move on order until the message gets through that society doesn't tolerate these activities.
Does this mean that being homeless is illegal?
No. What we're criminalising is a refusal to follow a move-on order. So when police come along and say to somebody, if you're being disorderly or doing one of the behaviours that's outlined with this legislation and you refuse to comply, then you can be arrested.
How long do you have to... What is the offence? Is it if they're rough sleeping somewhere and they're told to move on, does that mean the fact that they were just rough sleeping is not allowed?
What is criminalised is refusing to follow a move-on order, and that's what we're trying to do. We're wanting to reclaim the streets of our city for the enjoyment of people who come and live here and work here, so that they're not operating or trying to navigate their way through a threatening environment. And the thing that we hear again and again, in fact, from businesses who say they no longer, their workers no longer feel safe leaving the office at 5 o'clock, they're the people that we're wanting to help here.
How long do they have to move on once you tell them to do so?
Well, they need to move on immediately, and they've got to stay away for 24 hours from the space that they move on from.
And what assistance will police give those people if they're unsure where to move? They've got nowhere to go.
Well, the police are, of course, well used to dealing with this group of people that we have. And look, we all recognise that many of the people that we're talking about have complex needs, and if I was standing here and saying our only response is move on orders, then we'd be rightly criticised. But of course it's not our only response. The government, on behalf of all New Zealanders, has huge resources over to help through housing first policies, through the mental health support that we have, through the support we give to the city missions and many other places. But there is a small group who don't want to take that help and are causing mayhem on our streets, and these are the people that we're going to tell you need to move on.
I just want to make a couple of comments in relation to the policing side of it, because you're making the assumption that all these people are homeless. That is not the case. Many of the people that choose to come in and set up and live on the streets and cause the social problems that we see are also vulnerable themselves. And one of the issues that was clearly brought forward to us by St John's is that, especially later in the evening or at night, they become the target of people that may have come into the CBD. So there's a safety issue for them as well. And by the way, most of these people have got somewhere to go. They've got somewhere to go, they've got somewhere to sleep, and police are very, very good at dealing with that. If you actually spent a day with the police, you'd see that they know most of those people. They try to develop relationships with them. If you go on the beat down in Wellington Central, they've got the key to the accommodation for some of them to make sure they get home safely at night and that they're in bed. But what we're saying is that as a country, you know, it's wrong to say that we can have people living on the streets. It is not safe for them. It is not good for the people that come in and want to use that space. And so this is just one tool in many. We've got one of the most generous welfare systems in the world. There is a lot of work that's been done through successive governments to try and deal with the genuine homelessness and get people into safe housing. That will continue, but I just want to be really clear that a lot of the people that choose to come in and be on the streets are making that as a conscious decision. They've got somewhere to go, they've got somewhere to sleep, they've got somewhere to be safe. They're making bad decisions, and they're coming in and they're setting up on the streets, and they make themselves vulnerable to drug dealers and wanting to deal drugs. They make themselves vulnerable to people that may target them, and they also cause massive social issues when they come in. So that is why we're dealing with those issues.
Why not invest more in the things that will stop them from getting in that situation in the first place, like helping them open bank accounts?
Well, we are.
The transitional housing services, there's not enough spaces and they don't have enough funding. If someone was to turn up right now at transitional housing or MSD and say, I need somewhere to stay, are you confident that they will be able to get somewhere to stay?
Well, as a government, we've put additional resources, 300 extra spots for homeless people announced in September, and they're not all taken up. And so we continue to make those investments. So we've got a lot of tools to help this particular group of people, but what we're short of tools on is dealing with those who refused to take that help and continue to cause intimidation and chaos in our main streets, and that's what we're giving the police, that extra tool in this legislation that we hope to introduce in the next couple of months.
Don't you think $2,000 is an unreasonable penalty for beggars and homeless to pay?
Well, of course, the way to avoid that is to follow the move-on order, and so any instructions such as this has to have some teeth behind it, otherwise it makes no sense, and that's why under the Summary Offences Act, a failure to comply with the move-on order could lead to a fine of $2,000 and indeed 3 months imprisonment.
Define a reasonable distance away from an area?
Well, that we give them the flexibility because there's no same situation. Like I say, it could be very different in the main street of Napier or Palmerston North or Whangarei or downtown here in the city. This applies everywhere. It's not just an Auckland problem. It's a problem that people face. I was just hearing from somebody this morning about Cuba Street and the sense of an unwelcoming environment that operates there. So it'll all be different, and that's why we're getting the flexibility into the regime.
So you're adamant that this doesn't criminalise behaviours tied to homelessness or poverty?
Well, it certainly doesn't criminalise poverty. Our government, of course, is very focused on reducing poverty in every turn. What it criminalises is refusing to follow a move-on order.
But do you think it does create a bit of a grey area about whether living on the streets is illegal or not? Because
no, it's very clear. What we're doing is giving the police an extra tool to deal with that group, to reclaim our streets for the enjoyment of all New Zealanders. Visitors and if you walk up and down the street today, we've got thousands of people who have come in on cruise ships, and we want them to see a beautiful city and to feel safe and welcome.
And what in practical sense, what is someone going to phone the police and say someone is sleeping outside my shop, then you move them on, or are the police going to be on their patrols and moving people along proactively?
Well, both those things. There'll be many instances where Minister Mitchell and the police have put extra resources into foot patrols, which has made a big difference already, but they're lacking that piece of that tool available to deal with this particular group. If they're not offending in a current regime, they're limited in their ability to deal with them, and that's why we're given the extra powers.
How do you deal with these people on the street, as you said before? You know, they already try and reach the services. So how is this sort of stick approach?
Well, the point is that there are limited tools, and that is why we've got the problem that we have. I defy anybody to have been into Central Auckland recently, Central Wellington, and many of our town squares to say that there isn't an issue that we've got to deal with. We hear about it every day, and it's a broad issue, it's a deep issue, it's not something that can be solved by one thing or another, and that's why as a society we do invest hundreds of millions of dollars in support for this group, but we also need to have some tools to deal with those who don't want that help and continue to create an environment where people feel unwelcome.
Yeah, I think just very quickly on the policing question is that yes, police's default setting will always be to try and work with people, to try and find solutions to identify what that might be, whether it be a health response, a mental health response, whether it is a genuine homelessness issue. And they'll work across government to try and solve that. But the reality of it is a lot of these people, they're non-compliant, they don't want to listen to police, they don't want to listen to anyone else. They're not really that concerned about anyone else's welfare, they're often not really that concerned or worried about their own welfare. And so to make sure that we place those people into a position where actually they are engaging, they do get the help that they need, we've got these move-on orders.
So police, I mean, at one point, police are being pulled back from mental health responses, 111 calls. At the same time, they're being asked to do a little bit more with mental health.
Well, you're trying to simplify something that's not that simple. As the police had a massive increase in dealing with mental health issues in terms of 2 police officers be off the street for their entire shift caring for someone with a mental health issue. That is not what we want. We want to have a mental health response, and mental health professionals looking after them. Police deal with people with mental health issues thousands of times every week, and they're very good at being able to triage, and they're very good at being able to provide support, and they're very good at being able to identify what that support is needed. But that must be handed off to either a mental health or a health response or a social services response instead of a police or a law enforcement response. And that is what we've done, and it's been very effective, and it means that we've got more police officers now being freed up to actually get out there and be on the beat, be highly visible, doing reassurance patrols, rather than being mental health workers, which is they're not trained for that, and I don't think most Kiwis expect them to be doing that job.
So will it be put like the constable's discretion? Because you say they've got these relationships with people. I mean, there's people who've been on the street for a while. They'll be known to police. They'll be known to a lot of members of the public. Will it be up to the individual police officer to decide whether or not to move them on, because in some cases they might not need to be moved on. They might be on their way somewhere. I mean, the convention centre is right next to the city mission.
Well, the beauty of our police in New Zealand is they've always had operational discretion, and they apply that very, very well, and they do it thousands of times every week, and they've got a whole range of options open to them. This is another one now that allows them to deal with. There's a gap in the response for police, and we feel very strongly that we're filling that gap with these move on orders, so that it's not a huge group of people, but there's a group of people out there that choose to come in and cause trouble on the streets, choose to actually create issues for other people in our CBDs, ignore the fact that they're putting themselves at risk as well, and ignore the police and everyone else that tries to engage with them, other government agencies that try to engage with them. We've now got something that will formalise it, that will actually hopefully get them engaging with those services and actually fix those issues, and at the same time we won't have people living out on the streets. And I don't think any Kiwi, any fair-minded Kiwi in our country want to see people out living on our streets.
Have you spoken?
Can we speak to an announcement on increased funding to mental health and increased funding to emergency housing to partner up with this?
Well, you've already seen announcements for extra resources into housing, and this government, of course, continues to invest on behalf of all New Zealanders hundreds of millions of dollars to support people who are in need in this country. So we have many tools, and we continue to. We're not perfect, and there's more work to be done on all of those areas around housing, around mental health. But one of the things that is missing in the mix is this tool to deal with that group of people, and that's why we're providing these move-on orders as another tool.
Have you consulted with organizations like City Mission or charities to ensure that they have the capacity to take in these rough sleepers and beggars and such?
Well, we provide a lot of funding for those groups already, and like I say, there is additional capacity. Do you want to make that point?
There's a lot of support that was announced back in September around additional housing first places, also additional support for Auckland City Mission to provide additional services in the city centre here. So that's from an Auckland perspective, and we're seeing those places be filled. They're not all filled yet, but they have been provided additional support. I'm also chairing a meeting with, I think Mark set this up when he was minister initially, but a meeting with non-government organisations, government departments across Auckland and the CBD, businesses, residents, really focusing on all of the different things that need to be done. We've got council involved as well, making sure we're keeping our streets clean, making sure we're keeping the cameras are operating, the lights are operating. There's a whole range of actions which actually are being taken to improve safety, but this is an additional tool in the toolbox to ensure that police have the tools to be able to protect, keep our city streets safe, and to make sure they're welcoming for people who live here, people who work here, and people who visit here. You know, our Auckland CBD is 8% of GDP. It is our front door. We've got the International Convention Centre just opened. We've got the CRL opening later this year. We need people to feel welcome coming here, and this is another tool in the toolbox to help us do just that.
What made you decide to go from Sunny to have some comments about how you're going to approach this operationally?
Yeah, so just what the proposal does is it gives us another tool to be able to deal and address with types of disorderly behaviour, where we can use alternative approaches in terms of arrest. So the tool that will be provided to us will be beneficial in terms of that response, in terms of if it's not meeting a threshold at the moment in terms of the Solicitor General's guidelines for prosecution, we've now got something that we can actually work upon. So that's what the proposal will allow us to do.
I feel like it was a tool that police were missing.
I think it's too early to go into actual detail until the actual select committee have signed off the actual detail of it. What I can say is that what the police will focus on is obviously keeping our community safe.
And do you find that people sleeping rough on the streets are creating an ongoing problem for people, visitors to the city?
Well, the comment on that, what I would say is, again, it's all about the police focusing on keeping our community safe and feeling safe. So there's two aspects of it. It's the feeling safe and the being safe.
What kind of guidance will police have to ensure that they're appropriately ordering or issuing these move-on orders?
Again, it's really too soon to go into the detail. What we will create is we'll create operational guidelines for our staff, just like we did with the successful gang legislation that came out. We will be doing that for move-on orders as well. So it's too early to go into the process.
How will police actually prioritise these incidents? Because isn't part of the problem that the response times are too slow, and so effectively even complain, these incidents aren't getting dealt with in time. So, and because they're seen as low-level incidents, even when they rise to the point of public disorder.
So what we do on a daily, hourly basis is make sure that our deployment and operational response to all calls are treated equally. So what we will do is just make sure that we respond to the call as per need and what our demand and operational aspect is at the time. What I can say is that during the last couple of years we've invested heavily into our beat teams across the CBDs. We've increased our beat teams to now 51 for the Auckland CBD, which means that we will be having staff that actually walk the beat in our CBD. So the chances of responding are greater within the CBD areas, and that's a national rollout for CBDs across the country.
In your opinion, when you deal with rough sleepers or people exhibiting intimidating behaviours, would an approach like this deter them from doing this again? You know, if they're moved on and then they do move on, are they just going to come back again? Do you think this is an approach that they would respond to, knowing these people?
Yeah, so just on that, what I would say is just making sure that we're working very closely with our other agencies. So it has to be a collaborative approach with other agencies. We've got a governance approach that's been set up at the moment with our officials group that Mr. Brown mentioned, that was set up late last year. And so MSD, Ministry of Social Development, have got the lead across that group. So just making sure that support is in place for people that actually need that support. Minister Mitchell has already mentioned the fact that there's discretion in terms of what we allow our police officers to do, and so if there is a need for discretion, then that will be given to make sure that people get the help and support they need.
What's the threshold for issuing these move-on orders? Like how wide is determining whether any behaviours satisfy these?
Well, I've read out the list of behaviours that are covered by this, and so it's those behaviours that can lead to a move-on order, and the issue becomes if somebody ignores that or refuses to cooperate, then they face consequences. So to summarise, what we're achieving is, we've made real progress as a country over the last couple of years, restoring law and order, fixing the basics in law and order, but this is an area that is still a real concern for many people up and down the country, including Auckland, but not just Auckland, and these move-on order tools will be another tools for the police to deal with that group and to make our people who live and work and recreate in the city feel safer and have a much more welcoming environment.
We're going to the whole select committee process.
Pardon?
Will this go through the select committee process?
Yes, it will go to a select committee. The exact timing, we obviously want to get this in place as soon as possible, but we also want to give a real opportunity for the legislation, when it's drafted and introduced into the House, properly scrutinised. So the exact timing of how that goes through the House is yet to be determined.
What made you decide to roll it out nationwide? Obviously there's been a lot of work done around getting it ready for Auckland.
Yeah.
Were you sort of given confidence that everywhere else will be able to do the same thing?
Well, because it's a broad issue right across the country, and Sonny Koshal has been at 14 different meetings in disparate parts around the country, and the message has been consistent that we've got an issue here that we need to deal with better as a society, and so it's just not an Auckland thing; it's a nationwide thing.
Can I just speak to that really quickly too? On the police side of it, it's a really good issue that you raised. Is that we spoke about the gangbang legislation, right? And we went through basically 6 months of everyone telling us that would not work, and why were we doing it? The police have done an outstanding job of operationalising that. One of the big criticisms was, how are the police going to operationalise this? How are they going to police it? They've shown they're a world-class police force, and they've got out there and they have policed it. And this will be no different, is that they will operationalise it, they will have plans around how they're going to roll this out, and I've got no doubt at all that this is going to be a really positive step in the right direction in terms of being able to deal with people with empathy, being able to try and meet their needs, and at the same time saying that we're not going to have people living on the streets and causing the
Thank you very much.
chaos. Thank you guys.
Is there a difference between busking and begging?
Well, absolutely. The law will not cover busking, will not cover fundraising or anything like that. Quite simple. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. Can I just get you to say